Hello, guys. Let me ask you something. Just think for a second. When you hear about Iran, Israel, United States, what comes to your mind? Maybe petrol, war, missile, nuclear weapon, proxies like Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah's like. Am I right? That's what we are told. But what if I tell you that's not the real story? Yeah, that's just what we see on the surface. Because behind all this, there's a much bigger game going on. A game about money, energy, and control of the entire world economy. And today, I'm going to explain this in a very simple, no complicated terms, just clear understanding. So, first, you need to understand one simple thing. There are always two versions of any conflict. Version 1, what people see. Version 2, what is actually happening. What we see now is Iran versus Israel tension, US getting involved, news shouting about security. But behind that, there's a silent competition. Not Iran versus Israel, that is US versus China. Yes, this whole situation is entirely connected to China. Because today, the real fight in the world is not with guns, it is with economic trade technology. Now I will explain the most important part, which is energy. See, every country needs energy. Petrol, diesel, electricity. Everything depends on it. Now think about China. Why is China so powerful? Because it manufactures everything. But how can it produce things so cheaply? Which is from cheap energy. Simple. Now where does China get energy from? Mainly from Iran, Russia, Venezuela. See, these countries are not very friendly with the US. So they sell oil at lower price. And also US put so many sanctions on these countries. Now imagine this situation. Let's say you are running a factory and you get electricity at very low cost. Obviously, your product will be cheaper. You will win in the market. That's exactly what China is doing. Now, here comes a twist. If someone disturbs that energy supply, like China's advantage reduces. This is where the Middle East becomes very important, especially Strait of Hormuz. This is like a narrow gate, and a huge amount of world oil passes through it. If something happens there, oil price goes up and every countries get affected. Now listen carefully. This is very important. Why is the US so powerful? Most people think military, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is the US dollar. Let me explain like a story. Imagine the whole world is a market and everyone is using one currency. That currency is dollar. So oil is sold in dollar, trade happens in dollar, countries store dollar. So what happens? Everyone depends on the US indirectly. This gives the US a special power. Even without fighting, it can control economic system. But now there is a problem. Some countries are saying, why should we depend on dollar? Countries like China, Russia, and Iran, and also sometimes India. They are also slowly trying to trade in their own currency. This is called de-dollarization. Now, don't worry about the word. Simple meaning moving away from dollar. Now, think if more countries stop using dollar, US loses its biggest strength, and this is already started, but it is starting slowly. Now let's connect everything step by step. Just follow me. China needs cheap oil. That oil comes from Iran. And others, some oil trade is moving away from the dollar. Now imagine if oil supply is controlled, trade routes are disturbed, dollar is brought back into the system. What happens? China gets pressure, US regain control. So some experts believe these tensions are not random. They are part of a large strategy, not directly visible, but indirectly happening. Now let's come to present situation. This is not theory anymore. It is already affecting us. You might not notice directly, but it is happening. Petrol prices change, economy becomes unstable, countries become cautious. Even a small disruption in oil supply can affect daily life. Now, here is another interesting thing. When oil becomes expensive, countries start thinking, let's move to alternate like solar, electric vehicles, and renewable energy. And guess what? China is already leading here also. So even if oil becomes a problem, China has backup advantage. So, what is the final understanding? Two systems are competing. System number one, which is US, they need dollar, financial control, and global influence. The next one is China system, which is manufacturing, aggregating trade, new economic structure. This is not just a conflict, it's a transition from one powerful country to multiple powerful countries. Now you may ask, what about India? India is actually playing very smart instead of choosing sides. India is balancing, buying oil smartly, keeping relations with everyone, not depending on one system. This gives India flexibility, which is very, very important. So, next time when you see news about Iran, Israel, war, oil crisis, don't just think it's a normal conflict. Think deeper because every second and ask who is gaining, who is losing, what is the real objective. Because this is not just war, this is a game of power, a game of energy, money, control. And the result of this game will decide the future of the world. That's all, guys. Let's meet on the another video. Until then, it's bye from Bharat. Bye bye. Have a nice day.